We are continuing in our sermon series this week in the book of Judges. We are continuing to look at the corruption of the hearts of God's people. We are continuing to look at this cautionary tale warning us that this could happen to us if we don't pay attention to how we're living, make sure we're following God's lead, God's commands, and if not, we will allow our hearts to be corrupted. This is the third week we're going to be looking at the judge Gideon, and this will be our final week looking at him. And we're going to kind of see his downfall, his end here. We find here that people are they're going to start backsliding. And what's interesting is this is the first judge we've come to where it talks about God's people backsliding before the judge has passed away. He is the first one. And now we're going to see what causes that failure. Some might say Gideon didn't know how to handle success. You know, there are sometimes pitfalls to success when it comes to our attitude. But let's start in the story. Let's start looking at the story in Judges 8, which is where we're going to be at this morning. Judges chapter 8. Now see, at the end of Judges 7, God has given Gideon and the 300 men the victory. He's given them the victory over the Midianites, the Amalekites, and all the other people that are with them. Now Gideon has called on the men who just left. Those other men that God said for him to send away, Gideon calls them back and says, hey, will you help us here and go catch some of these guys that's taken off? There's a couple princes from Midian, Oreb and Zeeb, who they need caught. And when they were asked to go get them, they were kind of mad about it. They felt insulted. And we're going to read this here. Judges chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. Judges chapter 8, verses 1 through 3, which starts out this way. The men of Ephraim said to him, why have you done this to us? Not calling us when you went to fight against the Midianites. And they argued with him violently. So he said to them, what have I done now compared to you? Is not the gleaning of Ephraim better than the grape harvest of Abiezer? God handed you over to Oreb and Zeeb, the two princes of Midian. What was I able to do compared to you? When he said this, their anger against him subsided. Their criticism was born of frustration. They wanted to be in that battle. They wanted to be in that battle against the Amalekites, against the Midianites, because they felt like they missed out on the glory from that battle. And ironically, this reveals two truths. Their complaining reveals two truths. First, God was absolutely correct to say that Israel would want to boast in victory and give themselves the glory. Second, Ephraim would not have respected, they would not have deferred to Gideon. God's pretty smart. He knew the people to send home, and he sent the right people home. And Gideon's response to them was very respectful, very diplomatic. He started out really well right after the victory. But then we see his heart. But then we really start seeing his heart. Because when things are going well, it's easy to say the nice things. It's easy to say the good things. But then things get a little tougher. We start to see people's true colors. And that's how it is with Gideon. See, Gideon and the 300 men were chasing two guys, Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. They were chasing them, and they got tired. They were wore out. They were tired. They were hungry. And so they stopped at the city of Succoth to ask for food. And this was the response of them asking for food. In Judges chapter 8, verses 6 and 7, Judges 8, verses 6 and 7, it says this. But the princes of Succoth asked, Are Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hands, that we should give bread to your army? Gideon replied, Very well. When the Lord has handed Zebah and Zalmunna over to me, I will tear your flesh with thorns and briars from the wilderness. Gideon wasn't happy. To say the least, Gideon was not happy. And then him and the 300 stopped in the next town. And we find this in verses 8 and 9. He stops in the town of Penuel. And listen to what it says here. Judges 8, verses 8 and 9. He went from there to Penuel and asked the same thing from them. The men of Penuel answered just as the men of Succoth had answered. He also told the men of Penuel, When I return safely, I will tear down this tower. Again, Gideon's not happy, and he doesn't mind letting his true feelings show, his emotions show. But we see here, why didn't Gideon talk this way why didn't he talk that way to the men he asked to go do that first errand at the end of chapter 7? I think it was because that army from Ephraim was too big. And he was afraid that if he'd say something, he would get beat. He forgot the lesson that he learned in the battle, that this battle wasn't his. This battle was the Lord's. It wasn't about him. It was about God. Gideon took the success of the battle for himself. He claimed it as his own. He needed to receive admiration for what he had done. And what did he do? He didn't do anything. He followed God's command. God gave them the victory. And now we continue to see this with the people in the town of Succoth and Penuel. These people, should they have said what they said? No, they shouldn't have. But when is it that we base what we say, that we take that example and say, well, I'm going to talk bad back to you? Just because somebody says something bad to you, does that mean you have to say it right back? Shouldn't we be above that? And Gideon wasn't. Gideon told him, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to rip you, tear you limb from limb. What should Gideon have said when that response came to him? It should have been simple. Yes, it was amazing what God did. God handed us over. God handed us this victory. It was God's grace that gave us the win. So don't trust in my strength, but God's. But basically, what did he say? How dare you doubt me? How dare you doubt what God's people have done? I'll show you power when I get back. You'll learn to have respect for me. Gideon let success go to his head. So Gideon did what he said he would do. He seized a number of people from the town of Succoth. He found out the elders. He reminds them that they taunted him. He let them know it. He wasn't going to let this just go away. And then we find out what he did in verse 16. Judges 8:16. So he, being Gideon, took the elders of the city, and he took some thorns and briars from the wilderness, and he disciplined the men of Succoth with them. In Penuel, things were even worse. We find it in verse 17, just that next verse down. He also tore down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of the city. Then we have an extra little detail. That we find out. A new wrinkle. The Midianite kings killed Gideon's brothers. And listen to what it says, verses 20 and 21 of Judges 8. Then he said to Jether, his firstborn, "Get up and kill them." The youth did not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a youth. Zebah and Zalmunna said, "Get up and strike us down yourself, for a man is judged by his strength." So Gideon got up, killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and took the crescent ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. Gideon was ruthless. His pursuit was motivated less by honoring God and more about people disrespecting him. And he wanted to show people, you don't mess with me. Look who I am. See who I am. This was all about personal vengeance. Gideon let the success go to his head. Couldn't you hear him? How dare they treat me and my family this way? How dare they do that? Don't you know who I am? Don't you know who we are? As I'm reading this, I think of the words from one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time, John Wooden, who said, "Talent is God-given, be humble. Fame is man-given, be grateful. But conceit is self-given, be careful." Be very careful indeed. Gideon wanted to humiliate these kings by having his son, who was still a boy, go over and kill them and show them complete disrespect. But these kings riled him up even more and said, "Just do it yourself." And he did. And Gideon became addicted to this success and what he thought was his success. But all along, it was God's success. God brought them the victory. Success, if we allow our hearts to be corrupted, can easily cause us to forget God's grace. Because our hearts are so desperate to believe that we can save ourselves. And that is not the case. Gideon thought pretty highly of himself. Which reminds me of words from another person. C.S. Lewis once said, humility, which is what we should have, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. God should be getting that glory. It's about him and not us. John 3:30, he must increase and I must decrease. It is not about us. We cannot let that go to our head. It's a bad attitude to have. And it all boils down to this thought. We get stuck on what we think we deserve. My first point. What we think we deserve. Gideon thinks he deserves honor. And it's easy to think things are due us. It's easy to get that feeling because it's plastered all across society. Everywhere we look, people are shouting that. Remember the old McDonald's ad? You deserve a break today. You deserve that. For all that you do, you deserve a break today. I Googled the words "you deserve" because I wanted to see what the next words were that popped up after "you deserve." And here's where the next words that came underneath it. You deserve the world. You deserve it. You deserve better. You deserve the glory. No wonder we think we deserve everything. We hear personal injury lawyers say, get the money you deserve. And the world itself just always says, well, you deserve fill in the blank, whatever it is. It's a dangerous way to live. It is a very dangerous way to live, because if we got what we deserved, oh boy, if we got what we deserved, we'd be in a world of trouble. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. And you were dead in your trespasses and sins, in which you previously walked according to the ways of this world, according to the ruler of the power of the air, the spirit now working in the disobedient. We too all previously lived among them in our fleshly desires, carrying out the inclinations of our flesh and thoughts. And we were by nature children under wrath, as the others were also. We are sinners, and our sin calls out God's wrath. Because of our sin, we deserve punishment. We deserve God's anger. Romans 3, verses 10 through 12. It says that it is written, no one is righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. All alike have become worthless. There is no one who does what is good, not even one. King Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 20, there is certainly no one righteous on the earth who does good and never sins. No one. There is no one. So according to what we deserve something very bad. Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death. Romans 6:23. If we go by what we deserve, and that alone, we deserve death. But God would rather treat us not like that. He would rather treat us by what we don't deserve. Psalms 103, verses 8 through 13 says, the Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in faithful love. He will not always accuse us or be angry forever. He has not dealt with us as our sins deserve or repaid us according to our iniquities. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his faithful love towards those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. As the Father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. God would rather give us grace. God would rather show us mercy. Romans chapter 9, verses 14 through 15. Romans 9, 14 and 15, Paul says, what shall we say then? Is there injustice with God? Absolutely not. For he tells Moses, I will show mercy to whom I will show mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. See, our attitude should be that of gratefulness, having a humble attitude, because we know what we deserve is death. But God shows us grace. It's an attitude that we have should be a grateful one that understands that we don't deserve the love that he gives us. We deserve death. God wants to give us life. One would have thought Gideon would have figured that out after the battle of the 300. You would think after he let almost 32,000 troops go home and only had 300 left, and seeing the army that they were to battle with was numerous, and God handed them over to them, you would think that he would get this. But he didn't. He didn't get it. Judges chapter 8, verses 22 through 27, tell us the rest of Gideon's story. Then the Israelites said to Gideon, "Rule over us, you as well as your sons and your grandsons, for you delivered us from the power of Midian." But Gideon said to them, "I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." Let me stop there. He does a great job right there. He puts the focus back on God with his words. But then by his actions, he tells a different story. Let me read on. Then he said to them, "Let me make a request of you. Everyone give me an earring from his plunder." Now the enemy had gold earrings because they were Ishmaelites. They said, "We agreed to give them." So they spread out a cloak, and everyone threw an earring from his plunder on it. The weight of the gold earrings he requested was 43 pounds of gold, in addition to the crescent ornaments and ear pendants, the purple garments on the kings of Midian, and the chains of the necks of their camels. Gideon made an ephod from all this and put it in Ophrah, his hometown. Then all Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his household. Gideon started out so good there. You follow God, not me. I'm not going to be your king. My sons aren't going to be your king. But then what does he ask for after that? Gideon asks for a financial reward as if he did something, as if he was the reason for the victory. It was his success when it wasn't. Why is he asking for all this? He didn't deserve this. God gave them the victory. Then he makes this gold ephod, which is a garment worn by priests and used as a means to determine God's will. So this becomes an idol, and it has eerie similarities with the golden calf during Moses' time. Gideon essentially sets up his home as another place of worship. This is not good. He's letting all this go to his head. And Gideon wants people to come to him for guidance, just like a king would do. He's trying to become a king and a god without saying it. The problem is, just as Gideon is showing here, when we think we deserve the glory for that success. We think we deserve the honor. And we may not say it, but there's sometimes people just think they deserve the glory just like God. My second point. We think we deserve the glory just like God. Gideon's walking a dangerous path here. He wants the glory. And he's not the first person to want the glory. Go all the way back to Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel. You remember how that started? Genesis chapter 11, verse 3. And they said, "Come, let's build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the sky. Let's make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered throughout the earth." Do you hear it there? Let's make a name for ourselves. They wanted the glory because they would have a tower reaching the heavens. But it wasn't their glory to have. Psalm 115:1. Psalm 115:1. Not to us, Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory because of your faithful love, because of your truth. It's not our glory to have. God did the work. Isaiah chapter 43, verses 5 through 7. Isaiah 43, verses 5 through 7 is written, "Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bring your descendants from the east and gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not hold them back. Bring my sons from far away and my daughters from the end of the earth. Everyone who bears my name and is created for my glory. I have formed them indeed. I have made them. God's speaking there. It's his glory. It's his honor. We should not be striving for God's glory. We're supposed to honor God by showing him the honor, the respect, giving him the glory that only he deserves. 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. God gets the glory. Not Gideon. Not me. Not any one of us. God gets the glory. Period. And as Gideon starts to stop letting his light shine for God and allows himself to start focusing on self-glory, we start to see the nation of Israel starting to decay because they're following him. And that's the dangers. When you have leaders who are more worried about themselves than they are anything else and want people to follow them instead of following God, when those leaders start to crumble, then the people start to crumble too. Judges 8:27 again. What does it say Gideon did? Gideon made an ephod from all of this and put it in Ophrah, his hometown. Then all Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his household. First of all, Israel should have had the good sense to know that worshiping any other idol was not right. That was their bad decision. They should never have done it. But they chose to follow him. They chose to follow this man, Gideon, whose heart was corrupted. He could have been such a great judge. He could have been such a better judge, but he was not. He wanted credit for the success. He wanted credit for the success that he did not deserve. He wanted the glory, the honor. He wanted people to remember his name. It's all about God. Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. Jesus said, in the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. All the glory goes to God. Living any other way would not be honoring God or following God. Don't let your heart be corrupted. Don't get greedy. Don't look for that. Don't do things for that extra pat on the back. Don't do things so people say, oh yeah, he did that. She did that. Let's focus on them and not God. That's not how we do it. God gets the glory. He gets the honor. He's the one who deserves it. And I pray that's how we live. Because he's the only one who can give us grace, who can give us hope, who can bring us salvation. He's it. There's not one other person here, no matter what good thing they did, can bring us peace, eternal peace. Nobody else. So let's give credit to the one who deserves it. And let's live that way every day of our lives as well. This time we're going to offer a time of invitation. We're going to take a moment, and if you're here and you don't know God, and you want to find out about that eternal peace, you want to find out about that hope that we can have in him, then come up and talk to me after the service. We'll talk about Jesus. and how he's the greatest person you could ever know. He's the one who can save you. So as we sang this morning, we're going to sing, "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus.